Hey everyone, welcome to Move the Finish Line. I'm your host, April Nowlin, and if you're looking for a podcast that's authentic, unfiltered, that may make you laugh and might make you cry, you're in the right place. Get ready for an exciting ride with me and my guests as we share stories of resilience, restoration, and winning at life from everyday women. My goal is to encourage you to break through the barriers that are stopping you from chasing your purpose. All right, let's get ready to move the finish line. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Move the Finish Line. I am very excited to have my guest tonight because she is someone I met through my church probably a year or two ago, maybe. But I didn't get to know her until probably the last 6 months. And as I got to know her, her story just touched my heart. And I just knew that you guys needed to hear this. So I am your host, April Nowlin. I am a life coach. I am a business consultant. And really my purpose is to help entrepreneurs to cultivate their purpose so they can make an exceptional impact on the greatest number of people. And so I'm also the author of Move the Finish Line, which is the book that started all of this. And here we are today, a year and a half later. So Kim, welcome to the podcast.
It is a pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me here this evening.
Awesome. So for those of you guys who are just getting to know Kim, she is a mom. She's a wife. She is also the CEO and the founder of Life Changer Solutions. And I'll have her tell you guys a little bit more about that. But she is just doing amazing things with women. And you guys I'm just so excited to share her story. So Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as April said, my name is Kim Young Woods. And you know what? About myself, it's changing. So the past 2 years or so, I have been becoming. So in the past, I would have described myself as Kim Young Woods, a corporate executive with 30 years of media experience in high performing newspaper organizations, being the number one leader in the sales division. But since then, and you'll hear this throughout my story, a lot of that has changed. I see myself more personally than professionally. And that has been a journey to get to where I am, but I'm happy to be where I am now. I thought I was fulfilled fully as my primary purpose of being a corporate executive throughout my 30-year newspaper industry. But God has a way of putting you on a path, his path. Mm-hmm. Think that you have the right plan in place, God will come in and shake up some things. So that's who I was. Here's who I'm becoming. So today I am the CEO and founder of Life Changer Solutions, LLC. We are a life and executive coaching solution firm for you that works with women to help them free themselves from bondage, whether it's financial, spiritual, or emotional bondage. I work individually with women. I also have a program called Life Changers Institute, which is an 8-week curriculum program where 10 women go through life together. And we work on issues such as how to go back into your past and see what some of those consistent issues are that are preventing you from moving forward in the present, because we all have issues, unresolved issues from our immediate past or our past from when we were in childhood that we just didn't deal with. So I help you face those issues, conquer those issues. I tell every lady that God has gifted me with the ability to bring out the greatness in people, kind of those underlying greatness that they don't know exist. My job is to help to cultivate and grow that. And one of my phrases is let me offer you freedom. Let me offer you freedom and help you figure out how to move from bondage to living a life that is free, full, and loving.
I love it. I love the work that you're doing with women. So when I met Kim, I didn't know anything about what she was doing, but over the last few months, I've started to see more and more of her programs and women just raving about the programs that they are going through with her. And so she's doing some pretty amazing things. So Kim, I love how you said, who you used to be and who you are now, because I want them to hear that story. You mentioned that you had been a executive, through newspapers for 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
And then all of a sudden your life took a unexpected turn and here you are today. So share with us a little bit about how that journey started, from moving from being a executive of a newspaper to doing what you're doing now.
Okay, so I will tell you exactly how it started. And it's a very interesting story. So I can talk about it now, but what I want people to know about stories of redemption is that at the beginning of that story, there was a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment. You can talk about it later, but I think it's always important for people to go back and remember the impact of the story that transitioned or changed their lives. So imagine, or have you ever heard the words, "We are going in a different direction"?
Yes, I have.
Hey, we're going in a different direction. So hold up. You tell me that after 30 years in a newspaper industry and executive sales leadership, that it's possible that my career is over just like that? Still shocked by that. So my story is a story of loss and freedom and reinvention. It's a story about corporate failure on the outside, but it's corporate freedom on the inside. And my story talks about, what happened when you put all the eggs or the majority of the eggs in one basket, and that basket is tilted over. So I had worked in corporate executive sales for the number one newspaper industry for 30 years. Started out 2 weeks out of college as an executive and worked throughout my career and made my way up to vice president of sales. Had moved about 5 or 6 different times with this company, was one of the top performing sales executives in the company, was the only female African-American executive in our whole entire company, and had a great story. And the interesting thing about when I heard the words, "We're moving in a different direction," 6 months earlier, my boss's boss had come into our market and talked about my sales and how we were doing, and basically asked me where would I want to go next. So, I was considering another move. And at that point, I had already moved 3 or 4 times, and I was in Lexington, Kentucky at that time, running the number one newspaper there. So when it happened 6 months earlier, and my boss, called me in the office, and now there was a huge shift in terms of what's going on with your numbers. Now, keep in mind, this was 2018. Everybody was having a tough time in 2018. And the interesting thing about it is that my numbers looked like every other VP of sales numbers in the company at that time. My company had already started downsizing. They'd already started letting people go in smaller markets. But, I thought, surely this can't happen to me. I've been here for 30 years. Lesson there: never get comfortable where you are. Continue to always look around for next opportunity, and be open to God's leading you. And honestly, if I had stopped, God was leading me to start looking around. Get comfortable. I had gotten comfortable there. We had built a home a year ago, and I had made the decision that we're going to stay here until our son Elliot graduates from high school, which would have been another 5 years. So my plan, but God had a different plan.
Right.
And he says to me, he initially drops the bomb of "your sales don't look good." And within 30 days, I was on what we refer to as a PIP, a PIP. And those of us know that a PIP is a performance improvement plan. So I'm like, a performance improvement plan. And honestly, my boss wasn't as worried as I was, but I felt something on the inside that this doesn't feel right. This doesn't sound right. And my boss actually said to me, he said, Kim, I think you're looking at it wrong, because he thought that this was going to blow over. Well, 30 days after I was on the performance improvement plans, that's when I walked in one day, and I'll never forget it. It was snowing in Kentucky that day. School was delayed, and I was going to come in after I dropped my son off at school. And my boss asked me what time. He called me. He never calls me. And he called me and asked me what time did I plan to come in. And I thought, this is the day. Keep in mind, I was already on the performance improvement plan, and I kind of felt and knew where this was going. The good thing is that I had started looking when I got on the performance improvement plan 30 days earlier. So I was already kind of putting some things in the works. But it's interesting that I wrote down this quote that said, "It is hard watching a slow death when you know that resurrection is right around the corner."
Wow.
Hit by that was, I remember being on this PIP, knowing that that job in my life was getting ready to die, but I was interviewing for other jobs, resurrection, knowing that something new was going to come, but I had to sit there and participate in that active, slow death, which was, we're going in a different direction. So that bruised my spirit. A loss of a job, and I know some people may say, how can you compare? But the loss of a job for me was the loss of a marriage. It was a divorce. It was a death. It was all my eggs in one basket. It was one of the very ways that I knew myself, the only way I really associated with myself. And that's why you have to not find one identification of yourself. You have to have different ways to describe yourself. You can't just be a mother. You can't just be a daughter or a corporate woman. You have to have other aspects of your life so that when one area of your life dies, you can go into overdrive in another area. So I lost my job, but let me tell you the glory and the goodness of the Lord. When they put me on the PIP, they put me on the PIP for lack of performance, and they were trying to fire me for performance. But, God has his angels all over the place, and God looks out for his children. I had a boss who I still have an excellent relationship with to this day, who fought for me, who believed in me, who knew that this was not about me, but this was a bigger corporate picture. And my boss fought to get me a 6-month severance package along with my insurance.
Wow.
Where does that happen? He said, Kim, we're going in a different direction. He was sad when I walked in. I looked over at the HR director. The HR director had tears in his eyes, and I knew what it was about. But when he said, we're going in a different direction, but I've been able to secure for you a 6-month severance package, I just thought, look at the goodness of God. But when he let me leave with dignity, he didn't walk me out the office. He didn't say, you need to go and pack up your things. I still had my key. He let me come back because none of my staff knew. Nobody knew on that performance improvement plan. I didn't tell anybody. And that's the one thing that I learned. Here's a lesson about going through transition. Everybody doesn't need to know. You go through transition gracefully. You go through transition with your head up. And when you reward the Lord in a favorable and a professional way, the Lord will reward you. So I was able to come back in and pack my stuff up and move on. But I tell you what, that was a tough time in my life. I was shocked. I was embarrassed. I was nervous because it's all I knew. I started in the newspaper industry 2 weeks out of college. All I knew. So that's the part of getting let go for no reason of your own. Here's the other thing that doesn't make me feel completely better, but it really explains the picture. Within 6 months of my being let go, my boss was not let go, but he was offered a severance package, and his boss was offered a severance package because the company was continuing to downsize and eventually filed for bankruptcy, and the company was sold. So I was just a part of the beginning stages of it, where they looked at the highest paying executives in the company.
Right.
Remember, I had been there at that time for 28, 29 years. And they were looking at the highest paying people in the company, and they got rid of that layer of executives first. And so that's kind of how that story played out. But it gave me an opportunity to say, God, what are you telling me? God, what do you want me to do? What should I hear? What should I do next? I was able to secure a job with another newspaper company within 2 months, which is how I got out to Arizona. I found a job with Gannett newspaper, who owns the Arizona Republic in Phoenix. And I moved out here as a regional automotive director for that company and transition. But I still didn't clearly hear what God wanted me to do, because I was like Peter. I wanted to stay in the boat. Right. And we get comfortable in situations where when God opens up a door for us, we're either scared to walk through that door, or we walk back through a similar door. So I walked back through a similar door with another newspaper company, saw the writing on the wall, was there for a little bit over a year, and thought, they're downsizing too. I need to really take a look at this industry, take a look at my comfort level, think about what I like to do. And that is how Life Changer Solutions came about. While I was working this other newspaper job, I thought, I never want to be in a position again where I don't have some control over my future. So let me figure out what I do great and what I can do and monetize it. I got licensed in Lexington, Kentucky, as a licensed minister. And at that time, I started a program at the church, Life Changer Solutions, with the women who go through the 8-week curriculum, and we work on anything from emotional to finances. Great program. And I thought, you know what? I've been doing this work since 2012. It is time to look at starting a business where I can do life coaching and executive coaching. I've been doing coaching forever. I'm everyone's mentor. I'm everyone's coach. And I was like, what can I do? So I sat down with a marketer. My husband and we sat down with a marketer and started Life Changer Solutions. Back to the full-time job, because I do have a full-time job. So I decided that it was an opportunity to get out of the newspaper industry and applied for a job at a global educational company that has 24,000 employees in 70 different countries, and said, you know what, God, I hear you. I hear you fully. I am ready to do something different. And I left the newspaper industry, and now I am almost 2 years into the education industry.
Wow.
But it has not been without its challenges. It's been scary because there were adjustments along the way. But here's what I will tell you about the adjustments. The adjustments have been great, actually. When I was in corporate VP sales, I was stressed all the time. I wasn't, you know, fully engaged in my son's life at games. I was there, but I was always worried about numbers and meeting my revenue numbers. Anybody will tell you now that I am a more relaxed person. I have offered myself freedom in making that decision to go into another industry. And I'm a risk taker. I'd never been a risk taker. If someone had told me 5 years ago that you would own your own business, I would have lied to them.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I never saw myself, but what I learned was that I had to trust God's process. God had a plan for me. And even when I get nervous about things now, I hear God saying, for I know the plans I have for you, for I know the plans. And it calms me down because I'm thinking that sometimes I should be here. And then God reminds me that I'm exactly where I need to be.
That is so good. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. When I think about the loss of your job, I've gone through 2 layoffs in my life before I went into business full time. That's actually what propelled me into business. Is by the second layoff, I was like, okay, God, you trying to tell me something? Because I had 2 layoffs in 4 years. With 2 different companies, same thing, downsizing and things like that. But you had been at this company for, like you said, 28 or 29 years. So, you talk about how you knew God had a plan, but in that moment of getting laid off and having to go tell your husband, like, hey, I don't have a job. What type of feelings and emotions were you going through? Just, as a mom, as a wife, as someone who has dreams and aspirations, and all of a sudden this rug has been pulled out from under you. What type of emotions and feelings did you have during that season?
During that season, I had fear of failure. I felt like a failure. Mm-hmm. I felt like, how do you lose your job? I felt like, how does that happen to people? And here's the ironic thing about it. I had let many people go. Mm-hmm. So when you're a VP and you're downsizing, you have let people go, but you're not thinking that they're going to let you go. So I felt like a failure. Like I said earlier, it felt like a death. I was really despondent about, because it was a pride thing. And I didn't realize that I had pride around that title, mm-hmm. that salary, mm-hmm. So I realized I had an issue with pride, and because I was thinking, I have secured a job in 2 months of them letting me go. I have 4 months of severance money that I'm just going to put in the bank. But why do I still feel so bad? Because you know what? It went back to childhood. And that's where I work with so many of my women on in Life Changers. It went back to not feeling good enough.
That's good.
Feel like I was good enough for them to keep me on that job. Why were they keeping other VPs who had similar numbers to mine? Why did they keep them and let me go? So I felt like I wasn't good enough, and it reminded me of my childhood. And as a child, when I struggled with my weight issues and things like that, I felt like I wasn't good enough. But what I had to do was get in touch with those emotions and cry, as we talked about earlier, mm-hmm. and pray, and then put some work behind that. And I knew that I needed to straighten up and fix my crown, because we as women, we have a crown on our head, and sometimes that crown can get crooked, and sometimes mm-hmm. they even fall off. But we have to pick that crown up, put it back on our head, and keep smiling and waving. So for me, after I got through those emotions and and shame of telling people. You know, the people at work knew because I was no longer there, but my family and friends didn't know. And then we're moving to Arizona. What? Which has been an excellent move for us. We love it here. But all of that, so just kind of walking through these emotions when you couldn't stop. I couldn't stop and sob because I had to process those emotions and can continue walking to find a job, to move, to get settled. It did not stop. So my close relationship with God really helped me to kind of put those processes in place for myself.
I love that. I love that, you can share that feeling like you failed. And I think as women, particularly in corporate settings, when we've got a title, we've made it up the ladder, it becomes so much part of our identity that you getting laid off had absolutely nothing to do with you. It was all part of the plan that God had for you, but still having those feelings of I'm failing at this. I failed at this job. You were there for 29 years, but in one instance, feeling that, and how our past shapes our view of ourselves and our identity and our experiences. So immediately it triggered like, wait a minute, I felt like this since I was a kid. This is just one more failure, that I got under my belt.
Exactly.
It had nothing to do with you at all.
No, it didn't, but I tell you what, I call it the pit experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the pit experience for me, just kind of being put in the pit. And I was telling my husband, when it happened, I said to him, I said, you know what? It feels like God dropped me. Because you think you're at this high level and then you're dropped. Now, he didn't drop me completely because I went on to secure another job that was similar with money and similar with a lot of responsibility and stress and headache. So I really traded one job for another job, but I felt totally dropped by God. And I felt like, God, where are you in this experience? And it was a pit experience for me. But what I had to realize is that the same God, and I think that Minister Greg Colbert said this, I loved it when he said it. He said, the same God that is in the pit is also in the palace.
Mm-hmm.
And what he most definitely said was, you have to know God in different seasons of your life. So the same God you got used to up high, you just have to learn who that God is when you're in one of your valley moments. He's still ever present. He's still the same, but you have to learn him in a different way. And you have to trust the process that if God put you in that situation, he has a path for you to come out of that situation. And that's exactly what he has done for me. And had I not followed the path that God has planned for me, I could still be sitting here disappointed, not feeling good enough, and still crying about a lost dream. But what I had to realize is that my days ahead are greater than the ones that are behind me. And when you're in that moment, I want to speak to the ladies who are in that moment right now where it just feels like it's desolate. It feels like it's dark. It feels like, you can't come out of it. But I promise you, God is ever present. He is around you, and he's not going to keep you in that situation for long. He is going to create a path and a light to that path where you're going to be able to see it so clearly one day. You just got to trust the process.
That is so good. Just trust the process. That is so, so good. So Kim, I want to talk about doing the work, right?
Yeah.
So you're laid off, you get another job in the same industry, you end up moving to Arizona, get another job at a newspaper. And all this time, God is like, look, I've got something better for you. And you keep, like you said, walking through a similar door. But when you made the decision that, you know what, I have been serving people, I've been coaching, I've been helping women all these years, and
Mhm.
now I feel like, right, this is supposed to be a business. And as an entrepreneur, I know that we are big on jumping off the cliff and building our parachute on the way down.
Right.
But there was not just physical things that you had to do to transition into being an entrepreneur and serving women what I like to call on your own terms. But there's
Yes.
also that emotional piece, because like you said, you're coming from feeling like I have failed in life to now having this confidence to support other women who are
Yes.
now chasing their dreams. So
Hmm.
what did doing the work look like? What did that process look like to get from I failed to, you know what, I'm healed and now I'm helping others?
Yeah, that's a great question, April. And you know what? It really was for me about rebuilding myself. I had to rebuild myself from the bottom up. And one of the things I'm very much of a process person. So for me, rituals are very important to me. So I had rituals that I used every day to rebuild myself. One of the rituals that I had, it sounds simple, but it worked for me, is that I love baths. So I took a bath every single night.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way for me to kind of be submerged in water and reconnect myself to God, because I knew I was off balance with God. Because while I was in Lexington working at the newspaper, my priorities were out of order. My pastor of my church had asked me to preach 2 times, and I told him no because I was too busy at work and I couldn't preach. So, you know what? God eliminated work so that I could do the things that are important to God. So I reconnected back to myself by taking a bath. I love praise and worship. That was something that I did every single day. Because remember, I didn't have a job for 2 months. So imagine not knowing when your next job is coming out. And I was interviewing for jobs, but I didn't know when I was going to get the job. So praise and worship these are some practical things that I did and women can do. Praise and worship with singing. I love to sing. I love to watch spiritual programming. I worked out. I went to the gym. I stayed on a schedule. I got up. When you're in a transition, try to maintain your current schedule. I got up every day at the same time as if I were going to work. And I went to the gym because I wanted to stay on schedule. Then I came home and, I looked for jobs and things like that. The biggest thing for me was I call them my rocks. I identified 5 big rocks, and the rocks are the people in your life that you speak to, and they can only speak to you. During a time of transition, you can't have a lot of voices going in and out of your ear. The only voices that you should have going in and out of your ear, of course, is God and a few select people that God has told you who these people are. So, I had 5 people, one being my sister, my best friend. One is a good friend of mine who's a pastor. And I talked only to them, and I only heard spiritual advice, and they gave me practical advice to keep me sane, to speak to that inner girl in me that was crying inside. I had a cousin who, if I wanted to call her and cry, we cried. So that was another practical thing. And the other thing is do the work. If you're in a transition and if you've gotten fired from a job, actively look for a job every single day. If you are in the process of separation and going through a divorce, make sure that you're incorporating praise and worship so that you're hearing God's voice while you're going through this transition, because you're going to need the strength and the energy to get through that divorce. And you're going to need everything to be open and clear so that you can hear God's voice and direction. So do the practical work. It's the same as as weight loss. Yeah, we all want to lose 10 pounds, but what are we doing to lose those 10 pounds? Are we eating the right foods? Are we walking? We have to use, I know that everybody loves and wants to be very spiritual when they're going through difficult times, but God gives us wisdom as well. So he wants us to mix that spirituality with practical application. So I just incorporated a series of rituals, and of course, my husband is my biggest cheerleader. So he knew exactly what my feelings were, and he helped me create a safe place where if I started crying during the middle of a movie, that was okay. There was no shame or embarrassment to that.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that you talk about the practical things. So, being Christians, a lot of times we're told, well, just go pray about it and, God's going to take care of it. But we do have to do those practical things. One of my self-care routines is bubble baths. I'm with you. I love a good bubble bath. I have this one iPod. I literally think it's the iPod 2. So it does really nothing but play movies, and you might be able to get on the internet. But I set it up at the end of my tub, and that is part of my self-care routine. For those of you guys who know me, know that I like playing with dangerous objects. So I love the gun range. I just went axe throwing for my birthday, and I'm like, yes. But I'm glad that you mentioned the self-care, because once again, as women, we wear all these different hats. We are the CEO, and we're the wife, and we're the mom, and we're the sister, and we're the daughter. We're all these different things. But I'm excited to hear that you took time out to say, what does Kim need in her life right now to get through this season? And you took the time to get those things for yourself. And I believe that contributes to where you are now, just a few years later, whereas this journey could have taken so much longer had you not done the work.
And here's the biggest thing that I did. I bet it on myself.
Yes.
I bet it. I said, God, okay, here I am. I surrender. And I put all the cards on me. I bet it on myself. I decided that it was time for me to figure out what makes me happy. What makes me happy is watching people grow and develop. I love showing people, a process to get better. I love coaching people and holding them accountable to really seeing the changes that they say they want to see, because everybody who says they're ready for change, they're not ready for change.
No.
You have to be willing and ready to do the work. And that's what I tell all of the ladies that I work with. If you're not ready to do the work, don't waste my time. Because when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you will do something about it. So I love helping women when they get to that point, when they're ready to do something about it, and just seeing what God does in their lives.
That's awesome. So Kim, I have had so much just joy listening to your story all over again. Of course, you guys, I got to hear the story before she told it to you guys, but even hearing it the second time, just some of the nuggets that you dropped, I'm like, yes, okay. I'm gonna save that in my little file for later. So next time transition comes, I'm gonna pull some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
So Kim, if there is a woman listening right now that is where you are just a few years ago, where you were just a few years ago, and they may be feeling discouraged, they may be in the middle of transition, they may have just gotten laid off, and don't know what's next, what advice would you give them?
The advice that I would give them is to stop, pause, and breathe. God has given you a gift. God has given you a gift of time to look at reinvention of yourself. Just because you've always done it one way doesn't mean you have to continue doing it that way. Pause and think about, go back to your childhood and think about those things that made you happy and brought you joy. If it's singing or sewing or whatever, in this reinvented you of who you are becoming, think about who you want to be next. We always have that opportunity for next. And that's when God closes that door, because he will open up another door. How do you want to walk through that other door? And what things in your life do you want to capitalize on this time? Is it time for you to go back to school? So that you can get that promotion on that job that if you had a degree, you would have. Bet on you and do that. Is it time for you to seek out help? Whether it's with a life coach or a counselor, betting on you, getting yourself emotionally healthy and spiritually sound to take on the next step in your life. Or, and just think about what those things look like and incorporate those things in your life and surround yourself with like-minded women who will support you whenever you're up and most definitely when you're down.
That is such great advice, especially that end. I have what I gladly call my tribe of crazy. And that is, like you said, that small group of women that no matter what time, what place, no matter what I'm going through, if I send out a text, it's on. They're praying, they're calling, they got my back. It doesn't matter. So right. Kim, if there's a woman who wants to get in touch with you, they may be listening and saying, you know what, I need Kim's program in my life. How can we get in touch with you?
Okay. I would love to work with any woman who is going through any type of transition in her life, or not even a transition, any woman who wants to go to the next level in her life. Life Changer Solutions. We do executive coaching. We do life coaching. I have over 30 years of executive experience, and I've worked with executives to help them get their next promotion. So I would love to help you with that. You can go on my website at kimyoungwoods.com, and all of my programs, my full bio is there. If you feel like your spirit has connected with my spirit as you're listening to this podcast, I would love to help you with whatever your next goals are. And you can find me on Facebook at Kim Young Woods and on Instagram at Kim Young Woods.
Awesome. All right, you guys, if you need to connect with Kim, get out there, connect with her, get into one of her programs. Kim, thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to talk with me today, to share your wisdom, to share your journey. I really appreciate you.
It's been my pleasure. I've had a lot of fun, April. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, all right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Move the Finish Line. I know I have enjoyed it. Get out there, listen to some of the other episodes, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, y'all. Now, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I pray that it encourages you and you were able to laugh a little bit along the way. Now, if you know someone who has a story of resilience, restoration, and winning at life, let me know. I would love to share their story with my audience. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you guys don't miss a beat. If you want to connect with me, hop over to aprilnowlin.com, where you can learn all about how I help women to cultivate their purpose so they can impact more people. You can connect with me on Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse under April Nowlin. Thanks again for listening.